Hello and welcome back to this episode of the Law of Relevancy podcast. We speak to leaders in the marketing, communications, and advertising space about things that they're seeing and things that they're doing in the world today to stay relevant. Today we have Anouk Pappers. She's a CEO. She's interviewed over 800 other CEOs and written 12 books. She also calls herself a brand anthropologist. Anouk, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Tell us, what is a brand anthropologist?
Well, I don't know if there's a clear definition of a brand anthropologist, but my story of how I got there is that ever since, as long as I can remember, I've been really intrigued by different cultures, by traveling. I was reading Jules Verne's Around the World in 80 Days at a very young age. And I decided, when I grow up, I want to travel the world, maybe not in a hot air balloon, but I really want to get around and understand and discover everything. So, of course, I decided to study anthropology because I thought, okay, if there's one education that will get me to travel the world, it must be anthropology. Well, it did not. What I was doing, I was reading books about other people traveling the world. So I said, hey, this is not right. I finished the studies and then I said, okay, what I'm going to do, I'm going to travel the world. I'm going to meet interesting people with a vision, but also brands with a purpose. Because I realized that if I'm going to travel and if I'm going to meet interesting people, there's no business model. So of course I had to think of, okay, what's the business model? So helping companies, helping brands with a purpose, tell their story in a right way, in an interesting way. I thought, hey, that might be an interesting way. So that's what we started out doing. I traveled the world several times, interviewed CEOs, CMOs, business owners, entrepreneurs, and really helped them tell their story. And the interesting thing of being an anthropologist is that we always look at things from the outside in. So we started exploring the brands from the outside in. We started asking questions. What's the purpose of your brand? Why do you as a CEO, why do you work here? What's your mission? What's your purpose? So we never talked about the commercial stories because of course they have their agencies to do that, but we really started to find out what makes this CEO want to work here? What's his added value and what's he interested in? And every year we published a book with 50 of the best stories that we encountered and we share them with people in our network, in their networks, to really inspire other brands to do good as well. Because if you talk about purpose, you're talking about doing something in the right way. So that was really our motivation to do this and to get these stories out there.
Well, our first interview ever on this podcast, we interviewed the director of communications for Microsoft. And he brought up how important the latest new P to the marketing, there was, when we first started learning about it, was like 4 Ps and now there's 5 Ps and there's 6 Ps. And so the latest one of those Ps is purpose, right?
Yeah.
And I remember about the time you were doing this in 2002, when you got started doing all of this, it seems that was really starting to coming into vogue, where brands are really attaching themselves to the social awareness, the social issues, whether it was hunger or starvation or vaccination or malaria or whatever it could be. There was some kind of a cause. A lot of times brands were connecting themselves to. Most famously, Tom's Shoes. I think they've done a very, very good job of it, where they, basically say that every pair of shoes that you buy, they give a pair of shoes away to, people somewhere else in the world who need them, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, one of the most interesting stories we heard, and of course it's a long time ago, it was when GE started with their Eco-Imagination and Healthy Imagination projects, where they were investing billions in helping people in remote areas have access to medical devices, for example, but selling it for, let's say, for low pricing, so to really give access. But the idea was that they really started building their people, planet, profit thinking into their core business. So that even if business is not that great, they would never say, okay, now we're not going to do this anymore. And I think those are the really good examples. And Tom's Shoes, I love Tom's Shoes. It's if it's linked to your core business, it's just going to be part of your company, and it's not some CSR that you do on the side, but it's really incorporated.
Absolutely. I mean, it gives people a reason to root for you. You know, a lot of
Exactly.
times brands can be like teams.
Yeah, they should be. Yeah.
Yeah, and even in some of the sports, we have a sport here. I don't know if you're a NASCAR follower. I'm not sure if you like race cars, but it is interesting. There's a lot of early in my career, we did work for NASCAR, and NASCAR is famous for endorsements. The drivers wear stickers of everything you can think of, from um, shows on TV to products you buy at the grocery store, the gas station. I mean, it can vary like how diverse the products are, and people will follow a driver or a race team and literally not do business with the competitors' products, or only do business with those products because they're just that passionate about it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's very strong and it works really well in the positive way, but of course it can also work against you in a negative way. And I think, and I'm glad that consumers nowadays are becoming more and more aware of which brands to choose when you talk about sustainability, people, planet, profit thinking. I think that's important, and I hope that will really last.
Yeah, me too. So one of the things I was curious about, I love hearing these stories of entrepreneurship where uh, people have realized that maybe they have a personal goal. Like for yourself, it was, I would like to see the world. That's like your goal. And so how do I create this situation where people will pay me to travel the world? I just love that thinking. It's like you have this goal, and so you invent this thing that they need. So what would you deliver to your clients? So let's say you're somewhere in a remote part of the world or in some place that's not remote. What kind of research were you doing?
Yeah. Well, for example, we did a lot of storytelling for brands in Brazil. And one of the interesting things in Brazil for Brazilian consumers is that they really like international brands. They don't like Brazilian brands, but they do like Brazilian brands with an international presence. So what we did a lot in Brazil is help brands that wanted to go international, to help them tell their story in English, in a nice way, include them in our book, make sure that those books get distributed to leaders in different countries. So our product, or what we delivered, were the stories, but also the exposure, or let's say the visibility of those stories. And we started off with books, but of course, since let's say 2008-9, we also started including, of course, the online world. And now
Yeah.
we still every now and then publish a book, but not that often anymore. But it's really now, I mean, everything is online. So
Yeah, and if it's online, then it can help in a number of ways. You know, and I'd love to talk about your mission these days. It sounds to me like you're an expert in personal branding and how you can use the internet to do that.
yeah. Yeah, what we figured out, or what we experienced in 2013, was that one of the CEOs we were interviewing in New York, he said, I love what you guys are doing for my brand, but I need you to do this for me. Because journalists, my shareholders, employees, partners, investors, all my stakeholders are Googling me, and I really don't like what they see. So we said, well, we can apply the same principles as we do storytelling for brands. We can do storytelling for executives. So at that moment in 2013, we did that once. We helped this CEO redefine his personal brand, create content, and make sure that that content got out there. So the moment that someone Googles him, or journalists, whatever, they find the interesting pieces of content that they need. And this is, again, in 2013, we did this once, but fast forward, it's around 85 or 90% of our business. And we focus on women and minorities in leadership to help them, because that's what we do, to help them achieve their next professional goal.
And so why have you singled out the women and minorities? Like, have you noticed something different? Like why do they need help?
Yeah, there are of course differences, but there are quite some similarities between how women and minorities look at themselves or look at the world.
Yeah.
And one of the most interesting things is that when a man gets an award, he puts it on the wall. When a woman receives an award, she usually puts it in a drawer. And that's just, let's say, that is what is actually happening, but it's so symbolic of how women and men are different. Talking about themselves, putting themselves out there, speaking up. Women, in a certain way, we still think that we're in school, where we say, okay, if we just get straight A's, if we do a great job, we will be recognized and we will get that promotion. That doesn't work in business. You need to step out there. You need to go out there, because if I don't say what I want and you do, you will get that promotion. And men just have, it's different. We're wired in a different way. And of course, we also know that when a woman does speak up, or when there is a woman boss or a female boss, she's often, a man is looked at with a lot of respect when he's on a high level. But still, in many cases, a woman on a high level is not looked at with respect, but she's seen as, I don't want to use the B word, but it's not always done in the right way. So there are many, many reasons why women are not out there. And we thought, we've been interviewing 800-900 CEOs and CMOs, and flipping through the books, it's like, wait a minute, 90% of everyone we interviewed are white men. So it's really become our mission and our purpose to help, let's say, underrepresented communities actually in leadership, to help them tell their story.
So what did you have that was different? Yeah, because obviously you're a woman. How did you step out there? What was it about you? Well, you didn't have anybody telling, you or showing you the way. How did you figure it out?
Apart from being really smart, I think it's just something, because I've always been very curious. I've always been asking people lots of questions. I listen and I deduct or I analyze what people are saying. And I think there's so many people who do not listen. And I think by listening to someone, I can detect what your story is, what the uniqueness of your story is. And I know how to translate that into something that people are interested in.
So what are some things? So like, for example, you help coach people on how to create this content. So let's say you're working with a brand new emerging leader, and do you encourage them to get involved in the community? Like, and then out of that becomes this content. Like, do you ever find someone that's just doesn't care or is not involved? And like, is that somebody that you can't work with? What are those things that they have to have in order for you to do what you need?
Yeah, I think the most important thing that we need is to know that someone has a next professional goal. And if that goal is just to make more money, we're probably not going to end up working together. The people we work with have goals. Yes, I want to be on a board, or I would like to sell my company. I would like to find investors, or I need to find new clients, and I need to differentiate myself. But there's always, I'm here now, and I really would like to go up a few levels. Also, I think there is a natural selection. People who are open or who are willing to start building their personal brand, they know that they need to have something besides wanting to earn a lot of money. Because if you just want to earn a lot of money and make more money every year, you need to have a soul and a heart. And I think so that's a natural selection. So we work with people who are driven. We work with people who are purpose oriented. We work a lot with women and minorities in leadership. They all want to give back. And that makes for great content, because it's not talking about what you do and the job that you have. We're talking about your vision. We're talking about your passion. We're talking about the value that you add. And those kinds of stories, that kind of content, that's what makes you want to reach out or connect to some person. Not if you know, this is my job and this is what I do. That's just not interesting.
And so do you do additional things outside of your core mission as a company, along the vein of what you're talking about, or have you just completely built your company around this vision?
This is mostly what we do. We do some other things as well, but that's not, we still travel, and we travel sometimes for tourism organizations.
Sure.
And we've done a lot of that in Brazil, telling the stories about Brazil from another perspective. So not just football and beaches, but different kinds of stories so not to have the single story. So we did that in Brazil, we did that in Nigeria. So we created some really interesting stories, which is, let's say, country branding, if you like.
Give us an example of one of the stories that you discovered when you were traveling. Like, what's your favorite story out of the 800 interviews and 12 books?
That's a tough question, but I think a really great story, it's a travel story, so it's not related to a brand. We were doing a storytelling expedition for a luxury hotel chain in the Middle East and Africa. And there is this really tiny country in Africa, which is called Djibouti. You probably haven't heard of it. It's on the Red Sea, and it's tiny.
Djibouti.
And yeah, Djibouti. Okay. Have you been?
I have not been, but I had a couple roommates in college that were from that part of the world, and we used to talk about all their neighbors all the time.
Yeah, so that was really interesting because first of all, we entered the country and we came in customs, and they said, well, do you work for that gas company, or are you for the United Nations? So no, we said we're here as tourists. So they started laughing, please enter, because it's not really a touristy place. What we did there, we went out on a schooner with a captain and his sailors, etc. We were having a seafood lunch on deck. And then one of the sailors started shouting, "Whale shark, whale shark." So he says, "Go, hurry, go in the dinghy." We're like, okay, so we go in the dinghy, we take our cameras, we take our snorkels. And then he said, "You're right on collision course." So, uh-oh, that doesn't sound good. So I said, "No, but this is great." So we go into the water with our underwater cameras and our snorkels. And suddenly there it is. It's a huge animal. It's 9 meters, so that's 27 feet, 9 meters long. It has a mouth like a garbage container, and I fit easily into a garbage container, and it comes swimming toward me, and I'm like, whoa. And then just before it hits me, it goes underneath, and I walk on it, and it's like, wow. And then, oh shit, forgot to take a picture. So the picture is from behind. But I mean, those kinds of stories. And every time we tell that story, it's like, oh, wow, we connect. Because you say, hey, I've swam with a whale shark, even though it was in Mexico, or I know guys from Djibouti, or whatever it is. There's a connection on a story level. And the interesting thing that we did is we did this for a hotel chain. And the hotel was sharing these stories. And of course, if you want to swim with a whale shark, and this hotel has been telling that story, you go to Djibouti, you book your room at this hotel. That's how stories can help your business as well.
Yeah, and that's very, that story I would imagine is pretty inclusive. You know, I think everyone in the world would be in awe of that experience.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so that's very helpful. So what are some other things that we can do, whether we're a president, a CEO, you know, just someone with ambition? What are some other things we can do to set ourselves apart from the crowd? I mean, you know, in my research and learning about you, I recognize that it seems like you have a particular look that you seem to feature.
Yeah, that's right. And I mean, that's part of personal branding. And I chose to have a personal branding color years ago because it just stands out in a crowd of people in suits that are usually blue, brown. But it's the way you behave. It's the things that you believe, it's the values that you live by. So when you're a CEO of a company, you have a huge responsibility because you represent the company directly. And there is research that shows that over 44% of the market value of your companies is attributed to the reputation of the CEO. So it's not just be a CEO, let's say, when you're at work, it's about being a CEO 100% of the time. And people are Googling you and people are looking for you. And they do not just want to see, hey, I'm the CEO of company XYZ. They want to see who you are. They want to be able to connect to that person. And it's about sharing those stories. It's about, I mean, offline, let's say, going into the communities, talking to your employees. I mean, it's all those things that in principle, every CEO knows. But if you think about the online world and how you can present yourself, it's by creating content. And I just learned you have to feed the beast. It's about creating content, and Google is the beast. You have to give content to Google to position yourself. And again, not as your job title CEO, but as a person. Who are you? Because we connect with people, We do not connect with companies. We do not connect with job titles. It's a human connection that we're looking for. And if you want to build your company, if you want to be more successful or more liked as a CEO or have a better image, you need to start talking about who you are and the things that you think are important. Because again, you represent the company.
Of course. Yeah, no, you're 100% correct. I mean, every year, like for my particular company, I'm representing the company, every single thing that I do, every single place that I go, people will always connect me with the place that I work.
Yeah.
Help us understand. So one of the things that I think is really important for our listeners to understand is the power of story. And then what are those things that make a good story? Like, let me give you an example. So if you scroll through LinkedIn, a lot of times you'll scroll past people you know, and they'll say something like, "We are so honored and proud to have received this award," right? And I understand what they're trying to do. They're trying to position in a way where they're trying to humbly present to the world something that they were recognized for, right? But is there a better way to tell the story of how they arrived at that moment where they're receiving a trophy for some kind of an accomplishment? Is there a better way to tell that story?
I think there is. And a nice way to tell a story is to make sure that you're being interviewed. So if I interview you and we talk about, the things you've done, and wow, at the end, you've received this award. How did it make you feel? What are you going to do? What are you going to do with this recognition? How are you going to move your cause forward? So it's the award is nice, but it's just a moment in time. So what are you going to do with it? How are you going to use this award moving forward? So I think that's a more interesting way of sharing it. I mean, people are sharing a lot of things and it does share, etc. But you really need to think about what's the message that I'm conveying here. And the moment that you can become a curator for your audience. So for example, whether it's about an award or something else that you're sharing, think about adding your vision and become the curator for your audience, because it saves me a lot of time, because I don't have to read the original article, for example. I can just follow your lead. And you build up that thought leadership or that industry expertise, which you already have, but now you're going to make sure that other people know about it as well.
How do you get over that hurdle that people have about being in front of a camera or helping to talk about some of these things that have to do with them? I mean, the way I was raised, it was never about promoting yourself or whatever. I'm in the culture that I'm from. It's held in much higher esteem about someone who doesn't talk about themselves.
Yeah, you're not the only one. And usually this is something which is really applicable to women and minorities, but I guess also to some others. But the thing is, what really helps is if you think about what you're doing or who you're doing it for. This is not about your ego. This is about helping the people on the other side of the room or the other side of the screen understand why they should connect with you. And if you don't give them that content, if you don't give them that ammunition, they don't know who you are, and they don't know why to connect with you. So often I use this when people are saying, "Oh, we were not raised to talk about ourselves." First of all, if you have, and that's what an anthropologist does, I create third-party content. So I can talk about you. I can say how great you are, all the things that you've achieved. And then I start interviewing, and then it's about you. Then you just answer. But I already positioned you. That's what I did. So third-party storytelling, as we call that, is a great help if you say, I'm really not ready to talk about myself. And then the second thing, think about your audience and think about you have to reassure them that you're the right choice for them.
Yeah, you know what? I completely agree with you. I can tell you that even in starting this on my little podcast here, I mean, I don't know if you can tell, but this isn't an advertisement. You know, I'm not promoting what we do necessarily. But I think about this forum as a place where we can educate others on things that are relevant and important to them, right? And so that's my motivation, is like, I need to do this so that I can help share some of this information that experts like you are putting out there into the world and how you're helping people.
Yeah, exactly.
And so if I'm letting that lead, it's worth looking at a camera and showing up and doing these interviews.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I also think at a certain moment when you're at a certain level, sometimes you just have the obligation to give back, and giving back is in sharing your knowledge, is in sharing your insights and the things that you learned. And I mean, if that's on camera, I don't know the exact year, but in several years, 80% of all content that we will be consuming on the internet will be video. So you better get on with it and start, but you have to start getting camera ready and not be afraid. And the good thing nowadays is we can use our iPhones. They're really good quality. So we don't need those big, scary cameras anymore. Just use an iPhone. I mean, you can record your own video. It's become that simple, but you just need, of course, you need to make sure that what you're saying is relevant, but it's not that daunting anymore, I think, as it was. And especially, I mean, the generations coming after us, they're going to be able to do it. So it's probably going to be more challenge for the older people, the baby boomers and beyond, but I think they just have to get used to it.
Yeah, for sure. Because our kids are definitely used to it. So then let's talk about how this manifests itself. So you've obviously helped, your business has been around for many years doing what you're doing. Can you give us an example of how you worked with a client and they were able to achieve their goals?
No. Yeah, I think an interesting one is one of our clients. She's an executive search professional, which means that she has two sorts of clients. I mean, she has the companies that are looking for talent, and she has her candidates, and she's, let's say, the search. So that means that she's in a triangle. That means that she needs to have a strong brand for candidates and for her clients. Because of course, if I'm a candidate, if I'm looking for a board seat, I want to be represented by someone who's really, really good, who shares my values, who does a great job, etc. On the other hand, if I'm a client and I'm looking for a search firm to represent me, we also need to be aligned on the values, and I need to understand what they stand for. Do they bring me diverse slates, whatever it is that I'm looking for? So the search professional needs to make sure that she has a really, really strong brand. Everything that we did with her was not about how she does search. The things that we talked about were about how having women on boards is a business imperative. That was her main topic. So we talked about this and how she plays a role in achieving that. What she does with her clients, with her candidates, in community, in women networks, in talking to CEOs and chairmen of the boards. So it was a holistic, let's say, idea of I'm positioning myself. Yes, I'm a search professional, but I'm positioning myself with a strong statement on how do we get and why should we have more women on boards. It positions her. She gets asked more and more to speak. She's on panels. She even got directly from one of the videos that we posted, she got a search assignment, but that's a very direct, which of course that's usually hard to track, but that happened. So she's the go-to person in her industry,
right?
If you're looking for more women on boards. So that's an example of how it really worked well.
And so this is someone that you started working with, and she probably wasn't 100% comfortable with publishing some of that content or whatever. How's she doing today?
Much better. And again, but it's the same as learning how to ride a bike. The first time you fall off, you really don't like it. I mean, we have so many examples of people we work with who were super camera shy in the beginning. And now together we're laughing about the first video, say, oh, let's take them off, let's make new ones, even if it's the same content, but Jesus, I was really bad at the time. It's just, it's all about practice. And funny anecdote, another client, she said, oh, I can do this easily because I'm doing speeches, I'm doing lectures, I'm really used to speaking in front of crowds. So we start recording, camera goes on, and she blocks completely. It didn't work at all. So it really took a lot of camera coaching and work, etc. Now she's great, but it's different. So speaking in front of a group is very simple, because unless you don't like, you're afraid of the people, or you're worried about that. But if you make a mistake, or if you say once, that's fine. But if you record yourself and you're stuttering and you're eyeing and you're using these little words, think so, it's awful. So it's a whole different way of getting your message out there.
I can completely agree. And myself, like I remember getting in front of a camera for the first time, and I've always been comfortable talking to like groups of people because I could get feedback. Like, am I on the right track? Do I need to, go this way or that way? But when you're talking to a camera, you don't get any feedback whatsoever. So you better have confidence that what you're saying is something that people want to hear. So it was very tough for me personally.
Yeah. But again, I mean, now you're really good at it and you've done it so many times. So it's with most things. I mean, it's growing your comfort zone, which is one of my personal goals in life. And that's why I travel the world. I just want to grow my comfort zone so I can walk in any place in the world with my hands in my pocket and feel safe.
Yeah, I thank you so much for joining us. One of my favorite sayings is the only way you can grow your comfort zone is to do something outside of your comfort zone. And people like you that make it a habit of pushing yourself and growing up. I have a lot of admiration and respect for what you're doing and your personal style. So thank you again for joining us. And I think, just the advice that you gave us today was on point and perfect for people trying to use these new media tools to help expand their reach and introduce themselves to others that have no idea they exist and make that beautiful first impression virtually.
Yeah, exactly. Well, thank you again for having me. It was a pleasure. And who knows, we'll have a second conversation at one point.
Yeah, absolutely. And congrats on your success with your agency and your company and what you're doing. And thank you everyone for joining us on the Law of Relevancy. Where can people find you? Where can they follow your thought leadership?
On LinkedIn. You can follow me on LinkedIn, or you can follow Signitt on LinkedIn. Those are two good places.
That's great. And you can follow the Law of Relevancy podcast anywhere where podcasts are found. You can find us on social media as well, and on our agency website, Bake More Pies. Thank you again for joining us, Anouk. We'll talk to you next time.
You're welcome. Bye-bye. Bye.